Anthony Grassi here for Small College Conversations. Happy to sit down with RMAC Interim Commissioner Lexie Vernon. Lexie, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat about our position paper and how we can move forward with the mission of Division II.
Yeah, so as we sit here, last week you guys released, the President's Council released a position statement on the future of Division II. I'm curious, as kind of a baseline here, what was the catalyst for putting this statement out?
It's been a long time coming. So we've had discussions for years, honestly, about how we can protect the mission of Division II amid the transformation that's ongoing with Division I, and particularly our colleagues at Power 4 institutions. And now, since the House settlement and the trickle down that we've seen, that's been very significant to the day-to-day operations of our athletic departments, and then therefore our institutions from a higher level of leadership, that we had to put a statement out there. We want to lead the way in these conversations. And I know we're not the first to come out and say that this is a problem within Division II, but to formally put it out there, make a statement, call out the good, the bad, the ugly about the changes, and acknowledge the good, which is a very positive thing for our Division I student athletes that can capitalize on these changes, but that it doesn't fit our model, and that we have concerns about the long-term sustainability of Division II and doing the things in the way that we believe is core to our mission and how we operate and what we do on behalf of our student athletes. So been a long time coming, and excited about the traction and attention it's gotten, and looking forward to finding the solutions to the problems that we've cited in our paper.
For sure. And so I'm curious, in the same kind of setting the baseline here for this position statement, who was the intended audience for this? As we'll get to, there's a number of facets that you touch on, as everybody watching could imagine, in a comprehensive statement about what the future for Division II should be. Who are all of the intended audiences for this position statement?
It's a great question. And I think our reach is, our goal for our reach is as broad as we can make it. So it's for the general public, parents, student athletes out there who are deciding what their future may look like, and then internally to our colleagues around the commissioners, Division II commissioners, our presidents around the country, and hoping that we get in front of presidents' councils from other leagues to say, hey, this makes a lot of sense for us. Let's start having these conversations about what the future of Division II looks like, given the landscape that we're in right now. So from attempting to get some national notoriety in some general publications, to being on your session here, and get in front of our colleagues about what's important and why it's important that we step up and speak out on these issues going forward, and not be afraid to shake the cart a little bit when we make decisions and have to make some change in how we do things moving forward. So a little bit of everybody, and certainly internally it's been success. We've gotten great feedback. But we also hope that we can distribute it more broadly to the general public who may or may not realize the differences of Division II, and that there is intercollegiate athletics outside of what they see on television on Saturday or during March Madness and so forth.
So as we dive into the statement here, one of the parts that caught my eye was the question of how do we insulate Division II from the craziness going on in Division I and preserve the student athlete experience. How do you, on the surface, approach insulating Division II in that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been very reactive. And my commissioner colleagues around the country from conversations that I've been in would agree with that. And maybe out of necessity, maybe out of fear of litigation or one thing or another. But how do we separate ourselves legally from what is occurring at Division I? There's 33 active lawsuits, at least last I checked or last I heard, for eligibility cases at Division I, and a lot of the reasoning and the case precedent and the information that's being brought forward as part of those cases is completely irrelevant to what our student athletes are dealing with at the Division II level and how we operate on a regular basis. So and what's really core to our mission. And so for us to have to react and change policy and overriding really core fundamental things that are important to how we run our programs and how we're able to run our programs, the resources that we have to run our programs, is really concerning. So I think it's about trying to draw a really bold line between the two subsets of the NCAA, and exactly what that looks like. I think we're curious to hear what others think around the country, and presidents that are in similar situations where they have very big concerns moving forward. We have an enrollment cliff and many other dozens of higher education issues that are impacting what we do in college athletics. But how do we draw that line so that we can create sustainable programs for our institutions that are really committed to providing high quality Division II experiences to our student athletes in the classroom, on the field, and in their communities.
I'm curious, in the initial release of this, the feedback that you received, how much was there any feedback from outside of Division II, given the concerns you mentioned that I imagine some smaller Division I schools that are facing a financial challenge are experiencing? Division III schools are in a fairly similar state with the state of small college athletics as it relates to higher education. There's folks in the NAI that feel probably a similar way in some capacity. Did the reach of this extend beyond Division II?
Not yet. I think that's our goal, is to continue to push and get some of our colleagues outside of just Division II on board with just the principle of what what our intention is with releasing this paper, because it's very applicable to really anybody outside of the Power Four. And we certainly wrote it from a Division II lens as a Division II league, and who really truly is invested in being part of Division II. And that's what really brings our membership together, is our commitment to Division II, because we're very diverse around our region and institutions, and what our goals are even. But one thing that we maintain in common is that Division II is at the center of what we do. And so coming from that lens, I think our hope is certainly, I'm a former Division III administrator. It's written from that background and that foundation that I have, certainly, in the way that we provide student athletes opportunities to compete at the next level. But hopefully we'll get some more traction, and this will help certainly get us to the next level and get it out within our NAI colleagues, Division III, and others around the country. And even, I think probably most importantly, some of our non-Division I or Division I institutions that did not opt in to the House settlement, that are probably more like us in mission and budgets and just general landscape than many of our colleagues in the Power Four and Group of Five and so forth.
So there are a few areas specifically that in the statement touched on reform is needed in this area. The three that stood out the most were employment eligibility and transfers. As I see it as an outsider, employment seems to be the biggest threat to small college athletics, where if somehow all student athletes get designated as employees, the 141,000 plus Division II student athletes. I guess I'll ask this question. Is there, in the ideation around this statement, is there a potential viable scenario for Division II college athletics to continue if that employment status comes to fruition?
No, I would say a hard no on that. I don't see how, from a financial standpoint, that our institutions can maintain providing scholarships and the experiences that we do with support around within our athletics departments without a source of revenue. Our Division II institutions and Division III NAI alike are their intercollegiate athletics program isn't a source of revenue necessarily for them. It's a source of great pride. It's the front porch of their institutions. It provides reasoning and drives students to enroll potentially at their institution, inclusive of their athletic rosters, and puts students in classes and heads in beds at the end of the day. And that's what helps sustain them from an institutional standpoint. So I don't see how an employment model is even possible. And we framed it in many ways to as we have conversations with administrators and student athletes, and the educational framework that we work under within an intercollegiate athletics model, and taking our employment handbook and overlaying that with what our student athletes are trying to accomplish as members of our communities, just doesn't fit. It's simple in that sense. So I don't see how that is sustainable at Division II, Division III from a financial standpoint, from a day-to-day practice standpoint. And we can bring in the SCORE Act here, and that's probably the one aspect of the SCORE Act that we would be generally supportive of, is to eliminate that possibility of student athletes being classified as employees at all levels. There's some other foundational issues that we have with it, just in general, based on our paper, and the fallout from Division I that we've been experiencing. But we can get into that in a bit, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, we can certainly get into it now. There's no time like the present. So outside of the employment status change or solidification that act would bring along as soon as it comes to fruition, where does the RMAC and you stand on the SCORE Act as a potential solution for college athletics?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if you asked any member of our 15-member institution staff, you might get a slightly different response from it, as is rightfully so within the scope of what we have within our landscape. I think the employment piece I already touched on is really important to us. And in general, anything that's going to eliminate the possibility of student athletes being classified as as employees is we're supportive of. That's a good thing for us in the general legal landscape that impacts all of the NCAA, all divisions, all intercollegiate athletes. But in terms of protections for student athletes, it's really Division I centric. And we see it as almost, I don't want to call it necessarily a bailout, but something that doesn't impact us, doesn't have it doesn't have a place. And in turn, that trickle down that is going to happen is not necessarily going to be good for us in practice, and in continued adjustments that we're going to have to make to stay competitive with Division I as well as we do with recruiting and for eyes and in other areas. So our student athlete advisory committee came out, as many have in Division I through III, national SACs have supported, and that's really important to us. And I think from a student athlete benefit standpoint, it's a positive. But overall, in our understanding of it and our analysis and how we've been engaging with our congressional folks in our region, is that it doesn't necessarily serve us. And we're worried about the legal precedent that it can set, and then the trickle down, that fallout that we would see at the Division II level within the RMAC, and how that impacts our day-to-day operations. When in our paper, we talk about very specifically the landscape of our coaching staffs and how they have to re-recruit on a regular basis the students that they have on campus, because these greener pastures are constantly being presented. When sure, not unique to our region, but in the Rocky Mountain region, a lot of our coaching salaries don't enable our coaches to purchase homes in their communities, let alone an assistant coach or a support staff member to be, establish roots and be a long-term member of a community. We see it happen. We're really grateful for those folks, but it's not the norm. And it creates different layers of challenges for our institutions, and it's tough to be an administrator in that space as well, to recruit and retain quality coaching staff members for your department. So I think it goes back to, again, this isn't something that solves issues for Division II, although generally supportive of those student athlete protections at the Division I level. How do we differentiate what this impact is going to have on Division II?
Getting back to the employment side of this, are there things that can be done, or that you and your membership are advocating for, to local leaders, national office staff, et cetera, to try to ensure that those protections are basically understood and ultimately, hopefully, implemented for Division II, and I imagine Division III as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a regular conversation. I think our Division II staff, Division III staff, others, and at the national office are really grateful for our lobbyists that are out there sending this message on a daily basis on our behalf and on behalf of our student athletes, who I think in general, from conversations, I know our SAC is very staunchly against this employment model, and being sure that we engage with them on a regular basis. I think our next call to our Congress people around our region is to come meet our student athletes, come talk with them, learn about what their experience is actually like. and see firsthand the really great impact that their experiences on our RMAC campuses have on them individually, personally, professionally, and how an employment model would be really detrimental to that experience, not just for operationally for our administrators and institutions, but for our student athletes. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, and that's what we're really trying to get across, and we do that via regular engagement and just trying to catch the eye of a very important topic, while the rest of politics and what's happening within our governments at the state level and at the federal level are more broad from a higher education standpoint, but really trying to keep this at the forefront and realize how important from a leadership perspective in developing these student athletes into the future leaders of our world is to our core mission. So that's really been our strategy, and this paper is part of it as kind of a next step. And we hope that we can continue to send this message to people around the country at all levels, whether it be in the media, those that sit in the room and make decisions at the state and federal level, to protect that experience of our student athletes.
Yeah, and I imagine the impact on all the individual communities as well as with an added element.
Yep.
In the conversations that your membership, your peers around Division II have had with legislators about your position collectively, what is their response? Like, is there an understanding of where you are coming from, or is there just a slight disconnect given maybe the lack of familiarity with the nuance within how college athletics actually operates that you and me and people that are watching this maybe get more so than your average fan who's clicking on ESPN to watch all the games on Saturday?
Exactly. There is a disconnect, and that's what this paper is trying to accomplish and bridge that gap at least a little bit, or start those conversations about it and bring awareness to the vast majority of the NCAA that exists outside of this framework that we see on television. And that's true for people in any other field besides our colleagues that are watching this interview today. It's about bridging that gap and getting that disconnect in general understanding that this is really highly impactful. House settlement for 90,000 student athletes out there is great. And they're going to capitalize on that, and those student athletes and those families absolutely should. But we can't take that fallout and accept it on behalf of the rest of our student athletes, the hundreds of thousands that remain within the NCAA that this isn't applicable to, but that policies are changing for. So it's definitely there's a gap in understanding, and that's what we really hope to insert with starting these conversations, and bring everybody a little bit closer to the middle for an understanding of how we have to be proactive and how we can establish policy that's different from Division I, and particularly those that have opted into the House settlement within our Power 4 Group of 5 institutions, and continue to provide a really great experience for our student athletes long into the future.
One of the other elements of your guys' kind of push is around eligibility. You mentioned the litany of lawsuits at the top of this. The NCAA just this week was back in court arguing about whether non-NCAA seasons of competition should count. Do you think that Division II has the ability, or is there the idea that there's the ability to enact unique, specific rules around eligibility within Division II that are, to the best of their ability, safeguarded from litigation?
Well, that's exactly the goal of what we're bringing forward. Exactly how that goes down and how policy has changed and implemented, I think is open to discussion for ideas and ways that we can be innovative. But that's exactly what we're talking about. How can we separate ourselves from the legal implications of what's happening at the Division I level with these eligibility lawsuits that are directly tied to earning potential and name, image, and likeness, and we're talking large dollar amounts. Not that NIL does not impact our student athletes, it certainly does, but it's on a much different level and on a different scale and in a very different way within our local communities, and just ways individually that our student athletes can mold their personal brand around their identity that is very rooted in being a student athlete. So I think that's really where the line has to be drawn, is why is Division II, Division III, and others different from a legal standpoint than what we're talking about in Division I and what's being argued in court. I'm really proud of Division II in reaction to the Pavia case, where that waiver was granted, and then or the temporary preliminary injunction was given to Diego Pavia, and the waiver was granted at the Division I level for student athletes in his same situation. Very narrow carve out. In Division I or Division II came, Management Council made the decision to not apply that waiver to Division II, and because the supporting factors behind granting that waiver at the Division I level have absolutely nothing to do with what our Division II student athletes are dealing with on a daily basis or on a broad level. So to come out and say, no, this isn't right. Now it creates some difficulties certainly on campus, and our administrators and coaches have to explain to their student athletes that your Division I colleagues that meet this very small carve out of this waiver get another year of eligibility because of this ongoing court case, and you don't. And that's very disappointing, and it's a hard conversation to have. But I think in understanding the full landscape of what we're dealing with and trying to protect the core mission of what we're doing as a division, as a league, is vitally important to those conversations. So it's going to take some brave leaders to stand up and say, this is who we are and what we do, and this is why we do it, and this is what drives our decision-making process. And those select student athletes that might end up in a group that is disadvantaged potentially by a decision or a policy or that bold line that I suggest that we draw between our millions of dollars earning revenue at the Power Four, Group of Five, and so forth institutions to our smaller Division Ones and Division Twos, Division Threes, and AIAs that don't find themselves in those sorts of legal battles because there's not millions of dollars at stake from one way or the other. And so that's where I think we have to draw the line and exactly what that policy shakes out to be. But I think we have to be unafraid to take on some of that responsibility and to be different and to say that, no, just because Division I did this, or this is the policy now, and this is what Division I is being sued over, that we have to then apply that policy more broadly. Sensitive to the legal aspects of it, very much so from a long-term sustainability, but there's a line that I think we have to be more bold in drawing as these conversations continue throughout Division I and at all levels.
Given obviously, the money the Power Four schools are sharing now with student athletes is on a levels of magnitude difference than what student athletes around the RMAC, student athletes around Division II are bringing in NIL. Do you think there should be different NIL rules or regulations or guidelines specific to Division II, where there are clearly certain Division II schools that have more resources than less? The disparity between the top and the bottom from a dollar standpoint clearly isn't what the top of the Power Four to the bottom of Division I is, but there is a disparity there where we've seen select collectives pop up around small college athletics. Do you think there is the appetite for rules to make sure that everybody is on more of the same page to help, I guess, mitigate against those that have more resources overpowering those that have less through NIL specifically?
Well, I'd start by answering and saying that I think that there is definitely more need for regulation in the NIL space across all divisions. I think we've heard anecdotally throughout this fall season from some of our institutions that have been able to secure some Division I transfers that there's been some empty promises given, and that through their recruiting process initially and entering into a Division I institution, that these promises were not followed through on. And so they enter, they're dissatisfied with their experience, and they enter into the transfer portal, and they start being recruited through that process. And they visited some of our member institutions, and they say, "Hey, this sounds pretty great. I can go on a hike anytime I want up in the mountains or in the foothills and still have and compete at the highest of levels that you can in your respective sport, and have a life and be committed to your academics and strike that balance. And so I think that need for regulation is certainly there. From a legal standpoint, and how exactly that differs from Division I to Division II, I wouldn't want to disadvantage our Division II student athletes in that space to be able to capitalize on their NIL. But I do think the ways in which we've seen it play out, at least here over the last few years, and what our institutions are reporting back to us, is it's not big brand name deals, and we're talking millions of dollars. It's the ability for a student athlete to leverage their status as a student athlete to be able to go home in their communities and give private lessons over the summer as an additional source of revenue, really develop their own personal brand, whether that's within their identity as an athlete or outside of that within other talents that they have, and what they look to do professionally when they graduate, and really have that lens. So yeah, I think I would be generally in favor if it protected our student athletes from any sort of legal fallout that we could anticipate from the NIL space. But I think that's probably more rooted in eligibility and within the NCAA bylaws versus actual specific NIL policies. So I think yes to regulation, whether it's specific to Division II. I think we should, if it's necessary, and not be afraid to do so, as long as it's not disadvantaging our student athletes in that space to be able to capitalize on whatever opportunities they may have.
More on this kind of the last big thing on this eligibility section of this. Division II has a proposal out to change the seasons of eligibility from 4 to 5. Where do you stand on that proposal, and do you feel that this is somewhat of a hedge against where things seem to be going at the Division I level from an eligibility standpoint?
Yeah, we continue to dive into these eligibility proposals and have been highly tuned in on the conversations that have been ongoing now for several months and over a year in this eligibility space, as we've been charged as a division to revisit what eligibility looks like, and as a result of the legal actions that have occurred at the Division I level. I think the 5-year proposal, which has been supported by Management Council, as you know, is a way for us to definitively stand out as a division who truly values our mission, in a sense that we want to provide equal opportunity to all of our student athletes, and limit the amount of legal overlay that we've seen at across the board. We've had some cases within our own league, and we've heard of others around the country where student athletes are being granted a 5th season of eligibility, and regardless of where you stand on the proposal in general, I think is a good thing for the division, and showing this flexibility. But also where I think where litigation has often come in is through this waiver process and that threat of litigation. If we remove the nuances and the possibility of being granted a waiver for one reason or another, and leaving that in the hands of NCAA staff members or of a committee, leaves us open to litigation. And so being able to limit the number of waivers that are granted, and saying that we are committed to a 4-year intercollegiate athletic experience. You've got 5 years to compete and complete that. And whether that means it takes you 5 years to graduate with your bachelor's degree, or you can capitalize on an opportunity to move forward with some postgraduate work, that we're going to eliminate the gray area here and just allow for so really extreme and unique circumstances to creep in a waiver space, and eliminate that need for litigation when it comes to decisions around these waivers, which is really where Division I is in right now, within this space, and obviously with the earning potential and antitrust law. So not a lawyer, but that's my grand understanding of where we're at. And I think as an operational and as a practitioner in this field, that's the most important piece that we have to hit on.
The other main element you guys were advocating for was changes around transfers, which the transfer portal writ large seems to be the area where there's been the biggest trickle down in impact from Division I, where obviously there's the windows and everything in Division I changes for them specifically, but the advocation for more flexibility for student athletes to move freely the changes in culture, which you mentioned earlier and in the statement, both around how coaches are recruiting and retaining their student athletes, but the culture of movement around intercollegiate athletics broadly have changed. Specific to transfers, what rules would you advocate for putting in place? And are you concerned at any point about some legal ramifications, given that, as you mentioned, the waivers seemingly through transfers has been a very large segment of the litigation that the NCAA has come across?
Well, I think we've done our due diligence here in the changes that we've seen over the last year and a half in the transfer space within Division II, and the academic standards and the transferable degree credit, and really in the weeds of the details of how you're eligible as a transfer student athlete, removing those barriers, but just allowing for free reign for transfers to always explore, or just have freedom to explore if there's a greener pasture, I think is a bit counter to what our mission is, which is, to provide student athletes with great competitive and excellent athletic experiences while engaging them within their communities and getting them to graduation. That transferring 2, 3, 4 times within an undergraduate career is not getting somebody to graduate with a degree, with a bachelor's degree within 4 or 5 years. And so exactly what those transfer rules, to go back to the old, I think we've been rooted in a manual that was developed in the 1970s, and we need to be creative in ways that we change what those rules look like. And there's a lot of really great reasons to transfer. Anybody can have an opinion on what those things are, but just to allow for a student athlete to enter into the transfer portal to explore what might be out there that's better, it seems very counter to what we do, what our mission is ultimately, that I keep going back to as a division, as a league, and doing so in a way. And again, if we can draw that bold line between, and I want to make it an us and them, but between the differences that are unique to Division I and our institutions that are pulling in revenue that they're going to have to share with their student athletes now, which is great. How do we differentiate what those transfer rules should be for our students? I don't think anybody within our league or within our position statement who's contributed would say that we don't want student athletes to be able to transfer, but for them to just be able to have kind of free reign and enter the portal. And that really deeply destabilizes rosters. And listening to our coaches and hearing from student athletes that are committed to staying at their institution and how that impacts their experience. If you look at the data over the last few years of those Division II student athletes that have entered into the transfer portal, overwhelmingly, they either return to their institution, they don't transfer, or they transfer to another Division II institution. So the NIL earning potential antitrust overlay that we've seen at the Division I level with this deregulation of transfer rules doesn't apply at the Division II level. It's I don't want to oversimplify it, but what that's done to the student athlete experience, and ultimately the goal of us getting them to graduation, has been compromised through this process. And so I think we've got to establish some guidelines and some more rigid ideas of what the ramifications are for a student athlete that wants to enter the transfer portal, and really help guide their decision-making process versus just leaving it wide open, and how that impacts transfer student retention, recruiting freshmen, college, high school grads, and how that impacts the landscape of getting new 18, 19-year-old kids on your campus to participate in intercollegiate athletics and create 4-year, 5-year participants within your program, and how important that is to the core of our successful teams. And I think we would see that, I don't have this data, but I think if we ran the data and anecdotally, our programs and across the country that are the most successful have the better retention rates. Now, there's a lot of argument for that, but I think this is the stability of their rosters that goes to their strength. And this complete destabilization is concerning. And I would be a proponent for instilling some more structure around transfers and what our student athletes can do. in that space.
So we touched on it multiple times. The idea for there should be basically a line between what you guys have termed in the statement as a professional college sports and an education-based model for athletics.
Exactly.
This comes out, a few years after a new constitution that changed how the NCAA implemented multiple changes around the NCAA. Through that, one of the main areas that has come to fruition is through playing rules, which you know plenty about, as sitting on the playing rules oversight panel, where now Division II and III have their own federated rules process. How do we get to a spot where there is a more clear, I guess, a line in the sand drawn between the professional model and the education-based model, given, how the changes have come? There is maybe a different structure that permits that in maybe some different ways. But I guess, how do we get from where we sit right now to there?
That's the $1 million question, I think, that we pose with bringing this position statement forward, and how do we draw that line? Is it something constitutionally that we need to establish? And we go as far as to say, is it a different association maybe? If that's going to protect us from this legal fallout and compromise the mission of what we're really here to do as Division II institutions and athletic programs. I don't think that's the ideal solution, to be honest, and personally, my own personal opinion. But I'd be an advocate for whatever that line, whatever is necessary for that line, whether it's at a constitutional level. Is it something that we just need to establish as a division within our policymaking and our philosophy, and get that in writing and codify it, and establish that difference, that we are a education-based model 100% of the time, and that not that competition isn't important to us, but that's vital to our educational mission within our institutions and what we do. So I think we want to think boldly. We want to challenge our colleagues to think boldly, and not allow the trickle down of the quote unquote craziness of Division I compromise who we are as a division, and truly what we're here to do as an education-based model for our student athletes and on behalf of our institutions.
Do you feel that there's the appetite or the opportunity to partner basically across division, across association, where we've heard some of your commissioner colleagues, broach this topic previously, of the Division I world is very different than what we want to be. We all, Division II, Division III, NAI, you could argue some of the junior colleges in there probably as well, operate on a more education-based model. Therefore, there's an opportunity for all of us to come together, and whether that's create a new association, we create some like guidelines that we all play within. There's probably some smaller Division I schools, as again some of your colleagues have mentioned previously. Do you feel that that is a viable solution if the current setup does not work?
Very well could be. I think it could be viable if we get to that point. Now, I'm a firm believer and supportive of our staff at the NCAA office, and core to our Constitution and how we provide protections to our student athletes, and health and safety, and just general oversight as an intercollegiate athletic association. But I think we have to think boldly, and if that means partnering with our Division III colleagues, Division NAIA, junior college, and other associations that exist, to create a common association with educational based goals. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't throw Division I out to say that they're not concerned about the education of their students and their student athletes, but that this level of commercialization has overtaken that lens to a certain extent, not being at the table when Division I makes decisions for their future and what's important to them, but knowing what's important to us. I think there's probably more that would jump on that train for a long-term sustainable model if it meant protecting our values and truly, even within the nuances of different associations and what's important, to continue to create a sustainable model. And on that note, I think travel's not getting any easier, and we have unique travel challenges within our geographical footprint, and it just keeps getting more expensive with buses and flights and fuel and hotels and anything in that hospitality space, that we're going to have to look at models where we get more creative and partner regionally for regular season competition. And as Division II pushes for less regionalization and in a national sense, that the day-to-day travel that we do, we're going to have to continue to be innovative and more creative in how we can include the quality competition that we have within our own regions to bolster our schedules and control our budgets from a sustainability standpoint long term.
On those last 2 points there of the increased expenditures specifically as relates to travel and the, I guess, de-regionalization in some elements of Division II, are there changes that you would advocate for how Division II is allocating resources?
Sure. I think this has been a conversation now as Division II undergoes a strategic planning process, or a different model of how we're thinking about strategic planning as a division, and how funds are distributed to conference offices and to our member institutions, and then within its own operating budget from a championship standpoint. I'm a big advocate for spreading the regionalization, as our Commissioners Association, I think, has come out and been pretty clear on what their stance is, so that we can truly have a postseason tournament that ends with the best team winning the national championship, and that not being eliminated within regional play, and trying to space it out in the best way possible to allow, so that we don't have conference matchups in the first round of an NCAA tournament. And us in the South Central region with our colleagues down in the Lone Star, we're a two league region, and that happens very often. So we'd be really supportive of spreading that out and how we allocate those funds from a championship standpoint. I think particularly we see it in football. That's really challenging for us, and just fundamentally how that impacts the student athlete experience is really unique. But I think continuing to support our conference offices obviously is really important to us, and continue to control, because that will continue to control expenses for our institutions and enhance the experiences that we do at the conference level, which is many more of our student athletes are exposed to on a regular basis in a form of conference championships, conference tournaments at a postseason level, which is vitally important to us at the RMAC to continue to do with our 15 member institutions. We touch a lot of our student athletes in our conference championship space, but I think doing so within the championship landscape within Division II, we're big supporters of, and would be a big proponent of that as well. But I do think from a marketing and promotion standpoint, media rights are becoming more of a conversation at the Division II level. I think that would be another area in which we could probably generate some more revenue. I think there's been some pretty baseline talks about NCAA postseason going behind a paywall, and how that could generate some more revenue for the division. And we're going to have to start thinking in that way. But we've got to continue to be innovative on ways to control cost for our member institutions. And when grants are being cut, state budgets are being cut, and we have an enrollment cliff, again, higher education issues that are applicable very much so, and that athletics has to consider. So any policies that we can do to put more money in the pockets of our institutions, increasing per diems and so forth for championship travel has been a big change as well, that we've been really supportive of. So got to continue to control costs, invest in that student athlete experience, and balance those priorities in a really intentional way to continue to support the mission of Division II.
You mentioned the media rights, which has been a very involved, heated at times conversation across small college athletics broadly. Obviously, you guys just have made a change in how you guys are streaming at the RMAC. Mm-hmm. I'm curious where you stand on, we've seen the Division II be more cohesive, maybe from a championship standpoint on, last year putting championships in one spot. Mm-hmm. We've seen, you mentioned the discussion of trying to potentially put them all in one spot behind the paywall. What has the impact been for you guys? We're only maybe a month in at this point for how it's gone for you being behind the paywall in that capacity, but for you specifically at the RMAC, and then where you think that cap basically is broadly for Division II, if there is a market for it, if there is interest with your peers in having that be a potential new revenue stream for Division II?
It's gone very well for the RMAC. I think we announced that we were going to go behind a paywall for our regular season. We've been doing championships for the last 2 seasons, and it went really well. We saw a lot of success with it, and a lot of revenue generated from it that we're able to invest right back into our championship events, into our broadcasts, and back into our student athlete experience. It's a scary hill to climb, and it's easy to get lost in the weeds of the how. But the what is really important, because I think it's becoming the norm of how sports in general are consumed. Outside of those that have a cable subscription of some sort and consume media digitally on Saturday, as I am a regular consumer of college football and other college sports that end up on ESPN Plus on television, especially women's sports. We continue to support the growth there as an entertainment entity. But we're able to enhance our broadcasts, put some minimum standards in place that say, this is a product that our logo from an RMAC standpoint, and that your institutions are putting out there to be consumed by the general public. And when it's free, anybody can click on it and watch it. But we've been really pleased. Our preliminary numbers for viewership engagement have been really great. We're preparing a report to present to our presidents here at our board meetings in October that show that you lose viewership in general without someone casually being able to click on an RMAC contest and check the score and then click off after a few minutes. But it really forces and enables those that have invested in the RMAC network and invested in their student athletes experience to watch games in its entirety. So I think we've seen that level of engagement be better than what we had anticipated, and that fear of kind of going past the free model and the feedback certainly that we get from folks who it's change and aren't necessarily interested in purchasing a subscription to watch the network and the products that we put out there. It's really enhanced the level of our broadcast. And I can't applaud our member institutions enough for going headfirst into this on a short notice, short timeline, and getting play-by-play talent and adding extra cameras and upgrading their infrastructure and their production software and so on and so forth, to really buy into what we're trying to do at the RMAC and present ourselves as a professional network, which we are. We have professionals that are producing it on a daily basis. And so I think it's the norm, and those that haven't taken the leap yet will do so in the near future, because the cost benefit analysis here, we're going to be able to give tens of thousands of dollars back to our member institutions in a time where revenue is of the essence, and then continue to be creative in ways that we can generate and boost revenue year over year for the network, and what we've seen many of our colleagues around the country do. So I think inevitably, from an NCAA championship standpoint, we're going to go down that road. It's a sought after product that people will pay for, and not to take advantage of the consumer, but we are a business, and it is an open market, and where we have to leverage the work that we do and the opportunity that we have to sell a product and provide a product to our viewers that's quality, and be able to reinvest back into that product as any general business model would. So I think anybody in the business world would understand the model that we're working within, and how we can continue to develop sustainable programs at our institutions, which it all ties back to the student athlete experience and how we can continue to support from a budget standpoint, from an experience standpoint, from a viewer standpoint, the experience of our student athletes.
Lex, I'll get you out of here on this last bigger question of, given where we're at now, and given the changes that we both understand that need to happen for the long-term sustainability and viability of Division II and small college athletics, do you feel that the NCAA understands the concerns that you and your members and your peers have as it relates to all of the challenges that small colleges are facing? And do you feel that there is a plan forward for a sustainable future for small college athletics within the association?
I do think our representatives at the NCAA office, and I admire them and their work on a daily basis, and hearing the great things that are occurring in Indy, and how they continue to support our student athletes on a regular basis. I think our goal with the release of this position statement, and really trying to stir the pot a bit, and have these conversations, is to continue to empower them to think boldly, and that we support them in thinking outside of the box, and being shamelessly supportive of the Division II mission and how we do it. I think a lot of times we get into a legal landscape where it becomes a have to do, not a want to do. But we want them to know that we support them, in that this is what we're thinking, and they act on behalf of our membership and hundreds of thousands of student athletes at the NCAA. That we fully encourage them to think boldly, and that's how we want to move forward within the structure, because the benefits that the NCAA brings to our student athletes are incredible. And the staff members that work in this space, again, I admire them, and they do really great work. But sometimes maybe their hands are tied. I mean, we've all been in those situations professionally before. But how can we push as a membership to untie those hands, to be able to make policy and speak voices at the table from a division-wide, association-wide perspective, to say, this is Division II, this is who we are, this is our story, and it's worth thinking boldly and taking a chance outside of what we would consider within our traditional framework, and what's been existing since the 1970s, before you and I were alive, or even thought about working in college athletics, or going, having this be our personal mission. So I think that's really what our goal is, and we really appreciate the support ongoing from our colleagues at the NCAA. And CCA meets early next week, and we're really looking forward to hearing updates and thoughts about these sorts of initiatives within Division II, and how we can continue to support them in their work, and try and untie their hands a bit in the spaces that they work legally within the NCAA. It's easy for me to sit here and say that, but we can continue to push that forward, and continue that path forward, and encourage them on a regular basis, and continue to support the really great work that they do on behalf of NCAA student athletes.
Excellent. Well, Lexie, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for providing all the insights in and around small college athletics, the RMAC position paper, and everything in between.
Thanks for having me. And if you haven't read our position paper, it's on rmacsports.org. Go check it out. It's a good read.